Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Galetz. I'm a program facilitator with the Regina District Industry Education Council, working in Sun West School Division. Today it's my pleasure to introduce Max Linklater, who is the Automotive Service Advisor working for Regal Motors Limited in Rosetown and Outlook. And he's going to talk to us about his position as an Automotive Service Advisor. Just a reminder before we begin the session today that if you are a student and you're watching this session, you can go to our RDIEC website and complete the student survey that can be found on the webpage. We have a monthly draw for a $50 gift card. If you watch this session or any other session, just remember that is www.rdiec.ca. Once again, Max, thanks for doing this today, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Kevin. So like Kevin mentioned, my name is Max Linklater, and I'm a service advisor working in both Regal Motors in Rosetown, and then I also work in our other store in Outlook, which is currently where I am actually at this very moment. So to start off my journey, where basically what my plan originally was, so I graduated in 2013 with the plan of teaching. I started at U of R, however, fell ill late in the fall semester. That made a decision then that I should move home and get treated. And then after that, to continue working, I went back to my original job back at the deli before switching into other temp jobs and eventually becoming the lumber manager for Central Plains Co-op. That opened some doors. My neighbor owns a rubber paving company, and the plans were for me to buy the company. So I started working with him in that company. Unfortunately, my illness came back, and I had to leave that job because it was, with my illness still causing issues, I didn't know if I would be good enough to buy the company and be able to continue running it. So I held off on that. And that led me to a position at Mainline RV, where I moved through several jobs there: finance manager, sales manager, and then before I left there, I was a service manager, which then helped me to get the job as the service advisor that I am today. So what is a service advisor? This is a definition right from Indeed's jobs. Service advisors or auto service advisors interact with customers and interpret their concerns to the auto mechanic. Their duties include answering customers' inquiries, making product suggestions and recommendations, and welcoming customers upon their arrival. I do all that, but I also do I'm mostly specialized in Ford, just because we are Ford stores. But in Outlook here, especially, we do a lot of Dodge, because there's a lot of Dodge customers around here, and there isn't a Dodge store around. So that's mainly what we do here, besides Ford, of course. And of course, in Rosetown, we do all of them, but those are our main spots. So I have specialized training in Ford mainly. I also am in charge of the social media platforms for the company. So one of the things I do a lot is post on the Facebook page for Rosetown, their Regal Motors Facebook page. Also answering questions that people might have from calling in during the day or sending emails through there, asking questions from something they saw on our website or something like that. And then we also in Rosetown, we are SGI certified. So part of my job is, it's all moved online now. So I had to take training to be able to do SGI inspections and fill them all out online. And then this is just more about the job description. Basically, I'm organized this shop time, create jobs for the technicians based on information given from the customer, which is probably the trickiest part of the job, because you have to try to communicate with the customer enough, because usually the best description they can give you is it's making a banging noise, but they don't even know how to better describe the noise other than one word. Of course, I talked about certifying SGI on the last one, and then collecting the money from either the customer or third-party company after the work is completed. And then in Rosetown, I'm also in charge of moving the vehicles in and out of the shop. We have so many technicians there, it's just easier for the service advisors, which is something that most shops don't do, but ours does in Rosetown, just because we have 2 doors, and it's with all the technicians, it's easier for us just to move vehicles in and out of there than have 9 different technicians moving vehicles all at the same time. And then in Rosetown, I oversee around 9 technicians. In Outlook, we have 4 to 5 depending on the day. And then, like I said, I create social media content. Mostly my social media content is directed around the service department. I also do it for the parts department. And the odd time I do it for the sales department, because they only have 1 guy and he only works 3 days a week. So required skills, definitely something that's required is organization. It's a lot of hands-on, especially right now. I'm juggling between 2 stores, trying to keep customers organized as to which store they belong to, making sure parts are where they should be, making sure work orders are getting closed. Unfortunately, this is getting to be our busy time. We only have 3 weeks before the end of the year, so we have a lot we have to try to get done, which again, time management, we have to try to get it all done before January 1st. Computer skills, a large portion of the job, especially nowadays, a lot of vehicles are becoming more and more digital, to the point where some diagnosing you can do with the customer right over the phone now, because you can actually see what their vehicle is doing on the computer. Driver's license, even if your shop doesn't have you bring in and out of the vehicles, it is a requirement, because you'll find yourself either having to pick up customers, drop off customers, run for parts, or even just moving vehicles around in the parking lot sometimes, because some customers, if they can't find a parking spot, they'll park behind a vehicle that's already in the way. Math skills, basic, you don't really need to know very much there. You do need to know, have to be able to add things up in your mind, especially because even though everything's on computers, being able to give a quote to a customer, if you know roughly your shop rate estimate and roughly how much time this job going to take, you can at least give them a rough idea what they're going to be at for a price without having to go through the computer and make a proper quote every single time. And communication skills is a huge part of the job. Knowing, any languages that even in Rosetown, Saskatchewan, this summer I had three different customers come through that were all from Quebec. They were just passing through, and their English was fairly poor, and my French, I haven't taken it since high school, so it wasn't great. But at least I was able to get communication through to them. So knowing French as a second language helps as well, or any other language for that matter, because we are seeing a lot of other languages also starting to show up in Rosetown, especially. Even in see a few of those. Writing and typing, those are very important. That's how a lot of communication is done between you and your techs. Because you will put it on the work order for them to see, and whatever you write on the work order, they kind of take as more or less exactly what's going on, right? Whatever you write on there is what they're going to look for. And customer orientated, again, you're talking to customers all the time. A lot of customers, they're coming in because their car broke down, and they want it fixed, and sometimes you can't fix it right away, but you got to be patient with them because they don't have anywhere to go. They're stuck, and they're relying on you to get them back on the road. And you'll find that some of them can get pretty aggressive and pretty rude, so you got to just keep that in mind and just be patient and continue moving on. And knowledge of the industry is an asset, but not required. Before I started as a service advisor, my only real knowledge of any of it was the fact I came from farm and the fact that I had been a service manager for an RV store. So I hadn't really done a lot of knowledge within the industry, but that doesn't really mean too much. There's lots of ways to train. There's lots of places within your job that you can find knowledge. I'm pretty lucky. I have a lot of techs that if I ask them a question, they're usually willing to share their years of knowledge with me and help me move forward in my job so that I can in turn help them better diagnose jobs for them and save them time and money. Educational requirements. So there is a course, I believe, through SAS Polytechnic. One of my coworkers, he took it for his parts training. It's not really necessary per se. Some places might require you to have it, but mainly the job is a very hands-on way of type learning. As long as you come with some basic language skills, math skills, computer skills, you generally have the job already mostly taken care of. And then of course, in-house training, again, our dealership focuses mainly on Ford. So it had that the general education you get is just for overall vehicles. So either way, I still would have ended up, even if I would have had that training, they still would have made me take in-house training because it's a Ford program made for Ford vehicles, so you can better understand what you're selling and what problems are within the industry. And usually in a week, I take around, well, I haven't actually taken any for a while because I'm actually done for the year, but at the beginning of the year, for the first about 6 months a year, I have around 40 tests or courses throughout the year. Usually they're all online now, so they usually put them all out at the very beginning of the year. And so I'm usually done by June as far as having them all taken care of. They're pretty easy, just multiple choice tests at the end of every one of them. And they have incentive programs to continue wanting you to go back and do more of them because they give you Ford rewards for every one that you complete. Work requirements, steel toe boots. It is a working shop. You're in and out of the shop talking to the techs. So it's very important to have steel toe boots. Long as you're careful, you don't really need like other safety things like goggles and stuff unless you're right up when the tech's working, but usually you don't bother them when they're actually working. You just once in a while walk past, ask them how things are going, see if they're still on time, that kind of stuff. So you're mostly out of their way, but again, it's still a working shop. Steel toe boots are definitely a must. Technology requirements, again, it's becoming more and more of a technological environment. I personally on my phone have 4 different apps that all are for work, as well as my computer at my station at work has usually, well, my one in Rosetown, I usually have about 8 programs running on. My one here in Outlook, I usually have about 10. So it all depends on the technology you need for what you're doing. And of course, you have to use them simultaneously all the time, opening and closing different work orders, different screens for making work orders, different screens for booking customers, different screens for diagnosing problems, different screens for Ford, different screens for parts, all that kind of stuff. And at the bottom, I just put there, CERTI, the program that we use is just the platform Regal Motors is currently using. It's a Canadian company out of Quebec, which is another reason why a second language is important, because the company that we have to talk to on the phone is more French orientated than English. Rewards of the occupation. The wages are fairly competitive. There's always work out there for service advisors everywhere. So that's why the wages are very competitive, because once you find somebody that's good at it, you want to hold on to them if you can. For incentives, I mentioned that a little earlier. Every time we complete training or when a customer has a vehicle, they get a review. Depending on how they fill out that review, that also helps us get Ford incentives. And all they are is it's a credit card from a Visa credit card from Ford that we can use at various locations to purchase items. Customer focused. I call this one not a reward, because even though you have some customers that'll drive you crazy, you do have a lot of customers that'll come in and make your day. We're very lucky. We live in a small town, so Christmas time especially, we have lots of customers that bring in goodies for us, which is definitely part of the great part of the job. But just some customers, every time they call, they have a real personal connection with you and like to have a conversation with you. And that's one of the great things about it. Community minded. This is more based on what I know from Regal's. Of course, the bigger stores probably aren't quite as community minded as we are. But Regal Motors definitely is. We basically, if somebody comes in for a charity or something and they need a donation, Rick's pretty good at helping them out, and if we can volunteer, we always do every year, a couple times a year, we volunteer to do Meals on Wheels. We usually volunteer for curling events, sometimes hockey events, all that kind of stuff happening in and around our communities. And future career opportunities. This job opens a ton of doors. From here, you can move up the ladder, service manager, shop foreman. You can take a different approach. You can become a manager of, you can own a store, you could own multiple stores, you could be just a general manager, or you can even go on to work for Ford or the general company itself. And learning opportunities, again, there's online training. A lot of the stores, if you want to go to school, they'll send you to school. So you have lots of opportunities to learn new, not only things that'll base you around your job, but things around what you might want to do in the future. Challenges of the occupation. So one of the big ones is the customers that have the Karen trait, as I like to refer to it. Unfortunately, one of the biggest challenges you'll have is you're going to have people that are going to come in and cause problems. We also have trolls on our Facebook page from time to time trying to cause problems, and they're almost a daily thing you got to deal with. The thing you just got to remember is once you're done with one, move on and focus on the bigger picture. Another challenge is it's a fast pace and then it's a slow pace. So some days, or I shouldn't even say some days, some hours of the day, you'll be running like there's no tomorrow, and then the next hour you might be standing there wondering what to do because all of a sudden the work has almost fallen off a cliff, like just come to a complete stop. So it makes it tricky that way because one time you're exhausted, the next time you're trying to come up with jobs to do. It's definitely a high stress environment. Again, when you have not only, well, in Rosetown, for example, we have 9 techs. That means you're selling 9 hours every hour for 8 hours a day. So when you have all those wonderful customers coming in, some coming early, some are coming late, you have customers calling, checking on their bills, you have 9 technicians that are bothering you all the time, phones ringing, it becomes a lot to take on. We have a new girl that just started 2 weeks ago in Rosetown, and she's getting there, but you can definitely tell it's more than she originally thought the job would be when she first started with us. The full moon factor. I strongly believe in it. I think most people that work in customer service believe in it. All the jobs that I've ever had in customer service, I've seen it. But basically, anytime you seem to be getting around that full moon, you start having customers that have a lot of odd phenomenons happening in their life, and they seem to cause a lot of grief. And we also, that seems to be where our techs start having oopsies and messing up in the shop and causing more problems. And then, of course, one of the biggest things right now is the price of goods. Obviously, post-pandemic, we're seeing price of everything has gone up. We have a lot of our customers. The big thing right now is, prior to the pandemic, an oil change at our shop was averaging around $80. Now we're averaging about $120, and that is a huge difference. That $40 difference has definitely made a lot of customers acknowledge and say not the nicest feedback. Unfortunately, there isn't really anything we can do because we have to pay to get the product in the first place, and we still have to make money. So unfortunately, we're trying, but at the same time, sometimes you just have to acknowledge the customer, apologize, and tell them, unfortunately, it's the world we live in, and we can't really help that part. And balance. For me, this is a big one right now. Like I said earlier, I'm currently working in 2 locations. This morning, I actually left my farm, went to Rosetown to pick up parts, then had to drive to Outlook to work for the day. And that's normally how Monday, Wednesday, and Friday work. When then Tuesday and Thursday, I'm in Rosetown, but sometimes I have to split the day 50-50. And so I never know where I am. So there's a lot of balance that way. But not only that, balance as far as out of work. My job, I have to work at least 1 Saturday a month. Usually I'm 2 or 3, depending on the month. As well, sometimes I start work at 7:30. Sometimes I don't start till 8. Sometimes I work until 5. Sometimes I'm done at 4:30. Sometimes I work till 6. So there's a huge balance, and I always have to try to make sure that what I'm doing outside of work is adjustable enough for those few hours where I know there's a potential that I might have to work later or start earlier or even work my lunch hour. I have to try to make sure that my life works around that. To a point, obviously, I still have to have a life outside of work, but I have to definitely keep that balance. Salary and benefits. So roughly $35,000 to $85,000 for a salary, or $16 to around $41. The $41 mark, that'd be more of the heavy duty service advisors. So those would be the ones working in the oil fields, in the shops that work on the big equipment. I personally am in between those 2 numbers. I'm definitely not at the low end, but I'm nowhere near the $40 mark, that's for sure. And then again, I mentioned about the Ford Rewards program. Other companies that also have programs similar to that, GMC, Dodge. I did work at Chrysler for a very short amount of time, and there I was getting, I was going to get a $5 for certain items that were sold during the work, for each of those items that I sold. So for example, wiper blades, if I sold a set of wiper blades, I would get an extra $5. Pension. So Regal Motors, we have a pension match program. Again, lots of places in the lot of the service positions do offer similar programs to that. Again, it's the nice thing about this job is they're so competitive that a lot of them try to keep the same benefits and the same salary and stuff to make it more competitive, so that hoping that people come their way or stay where they are if they find somebody that's good. And then at Regal Motors, we also have a group medical program, and that helps. And then of course, just the typical, you still get 3 weeks holiday per year. Unfortunately, at my work, we don't get sick days on top of that. But again, we're good and strong enough staff that we're able to, if we need a day off, we can take a day off and usually somebody's there to fill in. My work week usually is somewhere between 40 to 45 hours a week. The worst that I've had was 50 hours one summer when 2 people were off. But usually I'm not, around 45 hours is usually a pretty good estimate per week as to what I'll be doing for work. Opportunities, I mentioned this a little bit before. There's always lots of opportunities. I have my resume still on Indeed, not that I'm looking, but I kept it on there just because. And I usually get an email or a phone call almost every week, some weeks not, but there's always somebody looking for somebody with service advisor position that they have available. A lot in Alberta, definitely in northern Alberta. I get a lot of emails from there with them looking for people to come out and work in the oil fields and all that kind of stuff, because that's a position that, again, it's there, but not a ton of people are wanting to do it because it's so customer orientated and there's a lot of work that's involved in it. Service manager, again, I mentioned with this job, there's potential of moving up. You know, for example, Rick, the owner of Regal Motors, he actually started in my position, and now he owns 3 stores now. So he definitely has achieved moving up the ladder. He went from where I am, he even started below me. He started in the detail bay, then he went to where I am, then he went into being the general manager and then the owner, and now he's up to 3 stores. So he's doing quite well. And again, that's about the ownership. And also you could be working for the bigger picture Ford company itself. A lot of the people that come and talk to us from Ford that help us with the customer problems and other stuff like that, or even vehicle problems, a lot of them started as service advisors or parts advisors or sales reps for the Ford company at some point. Other jobs that kind of have a similar thing, parts advisor or technician. Also outside of this, hardware and lumber advisors, they're vaguely similar as far as the outline of the jobs. Obviously theirs isn't focused on automotive, but they still are giving advice based on their background. Ag industry, again, that would be more that $41 mark where you'd start seeing ag industry or oil field industry. Parts advisors, recreation parts and service advisors, and so on. And I mentioned the work-life balance before. That's one of the biggest challenges, I think, is finding the hours at work based and the work hours at home and trying to balance them so that you have a little bit of both, which is a problem with most jobs. But this one, again, like I mentioned, I have to work at least one Saturday a month. Sometimes I don't know which Saturday I'm working until that Friday afternoon. Sometimes I have a little more heads up, but sometimes that's unfortunately how things go. And personally, if you're looking to be in the job, unless you're really looking for the big payday, I would strongly recommend looking at smaller businesses, because they are the smaller shops are definitely nice. They're a lot more family oriented, and the customers, even though you might have a lot of them, they're definitely a lot more open and able to talk to you, and you can have good reputation and a good visit with them, and that definitely helps. And with that, I am all done. If there's any questions, I may be able to answer them.
Hey, Max, that was really good. One thing I was just wondering, I mean, and of course I buy my vehicles at Regal Motors, so I kind of know, kind of what the shop looks like, and I see you there sometimes when I go in. But how do you juggle that shop schedule? So you guys, what you're saying is like you kind of determine, you guys get the jobs in for the technicians, and you got 9 of them there. How do you juggle all that? Like how do you know who's busy and who's got, does this technician have time, tomorrow to see it, or is it, how do you figure that out? I can never get around that.
Yeah, it's one of the hardest parts because some days you have jobs that it requires a lot of estimating on time management. Over time, you start getting good at knowing which technician is good at which, so you can try to plan based on what the customer tells you of who would be able to do it in the least amount of time. But it's at the same time, like, unfortunately, some jobs, like example, yesterday at work in Rosetown, we had a job I originally booked for an hour, and it ended up taking 3 hours. So that cost us having to call a couple customers and unfortunately reschedule them because there was no way we were going to get to their work like we had originally planned. And sometimes that happens, but we try to avoid it as much as possible.
I suppose you get to know over time, you kind of get to know, it looks like this, I guess you're doing some estimating yourself, and it looks like this is the problem, and this problem usually takes this long to fix by this technician. Does it make a difference, if the technician's really experienced or, one of the younger guys, less experienced, or do you take that into consideration?
When the customer tells you the job, like for example, if they tell you their computer in their vehicle is glitching different messages on it, then that right away tells me, okay, most likely there's an electrical problem, whether it be wiring or something. And for that, I would automatically give it, in Rosetown, I would give it to Glenn because he's got 30 years of electrical diagnosis behind him. And so he could probably find it in an hour compared to one of my other technicians that only has, 10 years. They might take 3 hours to do the exact same. So over time you do, and the nice thing about Ford especially is usually if one person comes in and starts complaining with their Explorer or something that they're having electrical issues with something on their screen or something like that, usually that means there's going to be at least one more Explorer that somebody's going to call about with the same problem.
Yeah, they tend to kind of duplicate things like that. Yeah. There's no problem. So again, one other question about the training. You said that you take those different online things that take 10 to 30 minutes to complete. Are those updates on some of the common problems that they've been seeing?
Yes and no. Some of them are on the new technology of the vehicles. Some of them are on the new problems. We're not seeing as much on the new problems anymore. We do get daily emails about new bulletins and stuff about somebody down in Texas or something, or somewhere, like not necessarily there, but somebody at a shop there came across a vehicle that was causing this issue and this is how they fixed it. So we do get those almost, in fact, this morning before I left Rosetown, I checked, I think I had 3 new ones from just this morning, and yesterday I had 5 of them. So we're constantly communicating between the different dealerships as far as giving updates on different solutions and different problems. But most of the online training is a lot of the new technology that's coming out, how we can better do our job. But a good amount is on the different programs that allow us now as the service advisors to be able to go onto our computer, type in the customer's VIN, and while we're on the phone with the customer, we can see any problems that they're having, that they're trying to tell us they're having over the phone. We can see a lot of that now without them even having to come to the dealership. So we can already, in some cases, we can have parts already sitting for when we do book them for the problem because we were able to already diagnose it before they even showed up at the shop.
Yeah. Is parts supply still a problem, or is it, I should say still a problem? Is it a problem since the pandemic?
It is major problem. It's getting better, but just a couple weeks ago, China went into a lockdown again. So probably just after Christmas, we'll see another shortage again, just because a large portion of parts comes out of China. And when they go into lockdown, it really affects. It takes about a month before we see anything because it stops at obviously at the dealership or at Ford themselves at the factory, and then it affects us a couple weeks after that. So
the ripple to get to the store. Yeah. Okay. Renette or Mark, you guys have any questions?
Just one question for you, Max. As a potential or as a student watching your presentation, what is the job prospects for a service advisor? Does every dealership have an advisor? And Are these positions readily available for potential students?
Every dealership has an advisor. Depending on the dealership, the job changes a little bit. For example, in a lot of the bigger stores, they'll have a service advisor that's specific for each technician, just because that's how big they are, that they have each service, I shouldn't say each technician, but they'll only have maybe 1 or 2 technicians per service advisor. There's definitely always jobs available. There's always, unfortunately, it's a very customer service based position. So a lot of people just at some point, they can't handle getting yelled at on a regular basis, and they have to either get promoted or they leave into a different job or something. So there's always something available. And we, at our store, we actually, since I started there, we've had 4 service advisors besides myself come and go. So that's, and I've only been there 4 years. So there is not a tremendous amount of turnaround, but there is enough. There's always jobs ready for students right out of school. Or even if they, like I said, if they want to go SATS Polytechnic and take the course, they can, but it doesn't really give them that much more advantage. Obviously, they have better knowledge than I would, but as far as most places are just looking for somebody to that they can train and that has good customer service and capabilities already enlisted in them.
So
Thank you.
just for clarification for students too, when you say customers are upset, my take on that is that, they've got an $80,000 truck, it's not working, and they're mad about it. Is that, and you're the frontline guy that they see about that?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's one of the big things. Especially a good example is trucks. Like they're now around $100,000. So by the time they buy a brand new truck, and of course, because they're over $100,000, they are now part of the brand new tax. So that's even more on top of that they got to pay. So of course, then they buy it, and there's so much technology on them now, and they're all American made. So most of them have never been tested in our weather climate at all. And of course, winter especially, we'll have customers come in because one sensor decided to go off, and now all of a sudden their truck shut right down. And they get upset because they just spend $100,000, and you're telling them that the soonest you can fix it for them to get them back on the road is going to be 3 days. And that's a lot of money for them to have to now sit for 3 more days and wait for you to try to fix their vehicle. Even though it wasn't your fault, you're usually the one that ends up getting told what's wrong.
You take the brunt of that, do you?
Yeah.
Have to have a thick skin. There we go. Well, if there's no other questions or any more, I like to thank you, Max. That was really good. I think it gives any students that watch this some insight into what the job of a service advisor is all about. So thanks a lot.